Hello Twitch fans. I'm making a series of videos here to try to learn how to play Japanese video games when you don't know how to speak Japanese, which obviously requires learning how to read a bit of Japanese. So just to get started, a few basic things. We're playing Star Ocean, the original game that was never released in English until some recent remakes. So we've just started a new game. And right here at the character selection screen. So first thing to note is when you're trying to read in Japanese, they have three very distinct writing styles. So on this screen we have here in the upper left, we have the hirigana writing system, which is the syllabic alphabet. So every character represents a very specific sound. And then on the upper right, we have the kanji, which is the Japanese version of the Chinese letters, where every character means a concept or a word of some kind. And then down here in the middle, where we have the names entered, we have the third, which is the katakana, which is another syllabic similar to hirigana. So basically, think of it, at least I think of it, kind of like an uppercase and lowercase set of letters. And then below, we have the data entry. So we have all the different phonetic characters that you can enter. We're seeing the hiraganas here. So on the left side, you have the basic letters, and then on the right side, you have all the modifications with the different voices, other things that go with it, the small characters that modify the other ones, and then if you scroll down, we're at the total list of Katakanas. So it will quickly become obvious I'm not a Japanese speaker. I'm learning all this as well, so part of the reason for doing this is to get other people involved, maybe share some of what I'm learning with some people, and see if other people have ideas of what I'm doing wrong or where I'm making mistakes. So getting feedback is always appreciated. So as we look back at the first one of those hiraganas that we looked at in the upper left, here's a close-up of what that says and what those letters are. So I've parsed them out here, translating each one. So we have the letter na, the letter ma, e, o. This is often written as wo, but it's always pronounced o. And this letter actually only has one purpose as a particle between sentences. And then we have he, n, ko, u, de, ki, ma, su. So the Japanese have this fun thing where they don't put spaces between the words and their sentences, so we have to figure that out. Actually, you'll find though as you read, the way words are separated become a little bit more obvious in the way their kanjis are inserted, and some of them will just jump out a little bit more. So in this case, actually a lot of these are typically spelled out in kanjis, but because of the way the video games work, they chose to use the hiraganas because they were a little bit easier to see. So these first three spell the word name, which basically just means name, so that's a nice easy one because it's pretty similar. Then we have that particle o, so basically this just goes after an object to let you know that that's what you're talking about. And then we have henko, which when put into kanjis basically means to change. And then we have the verb dekimasu, so, and that's can or be able. And this is a common form of verbs, so in terms of verb conjugations, that'll come up later. So the kanji is the one that definitely scares most people away. So these are those four symbols that were in the upper right of the entry screen. So really the trick with kanji is that it's a lot of memorization for sure, but there's also patterns to it. There's a finite number of components and symbols that get assembled together, and to some degree those can actually make sense and start making it a little bit easier on how to remember things. So in the case of this one, we've got these four symbols. So we've got na, mai, nyu, and ryoku. So literally, na is name, and then mai is before, nyu is to enter, and ryoku is power. But the way kanjis also work is oftentimes they're paired, and when you put them two of them together, it can alter their meanings or create a new meaning altogether. So in this case, na and me are commonly put together as name, which you might remember from the hirigana is the word for name. So those two together mean name. And then mu is as to insert, ryoku is power. So the power of insert, input. I guess there's some logic there. So what that means when you really pull it together is just it's the instruction, enter your name. The katakana is similar to the hiragana in that the symbols are all basically analogous to the hiragana one. So for every katakana, there's a hiragana and vice versa. So what usually these are used for proper nouns, names, foreign words, things that you want to have stand out in a sentence and that might not have the corresponding sounds. So there are some elements of katakana that can be a little bit more flexible in hiragana in terms of how they come together. So first we have name. This is a little bit of hiragana, the same as before, so name. So what's the name? And then we have ra, te, a small e or I, Q, su, and then hu with a small a, and then hare, n, su. So when you put that together, you end up with the name Ratsu. So why does this look a little different than this? That's what these small letters do. So when you have a te followed by a small e, you end up with the letter te, or the ti. And the reason that you can't just directly do a ti is because in Japanese there is no ti. It actually comes out as chi if you do that. So this is a way to get around that with that foreign sound. And then in the second name, you've got the letter fu, a, re, and su, so farensu. And again, similarly, to get a fa, you do fu and a, because if you did, they don't have a fa in Japanese, it would come out as ha otherwise. So in the English port, Product Farence is your character, so this is the Japanese somewhat equivalent, Ratsu, Farence. And then the second layer, we have Nichukyu Nemu. So often when you see katakana, it's a clue that you might actually be able to understand this word if you parse it out. So Nikyu Nemo, nickname. So a shorter version of the character's name, Ra-te-i, or Rahi. So before we dive too much into the deep end of how we are actually going to go in and read these things, it's important that you learn how to actually read the letters. So we'll start with the phonetic ones because those are a little bit easier. Today, just to get started, we'll do the vowels. Those are probably a good place to start. They're very common, and you'll see a lot of them, and it makes a nice bite-sized thing. So the letter A, is done as a big loopy thing in hiragana, and in katakana, it's just kind of a stick with a little hook on top, drawn like this. Letter I or E in hiragana, two side-by-side strokes, and then kind of looks like a lopsided T in katakana. Letter U or U is sort of this little loop, and then in katakana, these ones are confusing because there's so many that look like this, but it's kind of like a little Pac-Man with a hat. And then we have letter E or eh, so it's like a Z with a little stroke on top. And then in katakana, it's almost a capital I or maybe even a sideways H, depending on how you want to look at it. And then O is another slightly complicated one with a little loop, and then the extra little dash, and then the katakana, we're just a stick with a extra support. All right, so now it's time to follow the instructions and enter our name. So my name is Daryl, which is not a very Japanese name, so that means I need to go down from the hiragana to the katakana in the list. So finding the letter TA, but I'm not a T, I'm a D. So since they don't have a native T or D, I have to go to the T with the quotation mark. So anytime you see a T letter with a quotation mark, that turns it into a D. So that's da. And now ri is a letter we can actually find. So there is ra, ri, ru, re, ro. So ri. And then L. So L and R are the same letter in Japanese. They pronounce it kind of halfway between, like a. So typically, if you end on a consonant, they just add a little U at the end that's mostly silent. So dariru. And just for good measure, we'll throw in a little bit more, and I'll be da mu, just for a good measure. Now, nickname. Obviously, Rati doesn't make any sense anymore, so we'll clear that out. And I'll have a short name that the character will mostly go by as Da the oh Dario. All right, and then that will be all we have today. I know it's a lot to absorb, but if you practice writing out some of these letters that we've learned today, you'll be in good shape for next time. Till then.